the future is not defined by where we are right now. There's plenty of um, action and decisions and plenty of opportunity out there for development. Journey. It's been 16 years since I last left Walter Reed. I was medically retired in August of 2009 after walking out of there. The decision to go into the infantry enlisted is because I came from a long lineage, family lineage of Navy in my personal family. And a lot of them were majority were officers, and they decided that as true part of true leadership, in order for me to tell someone, and I was a college graduate as well, in order to lead someone, I needed to understand what they were doing first before I lead. I don't think leadership role is a role that's been given to you. You kind of have to earn it. And so I opted to not go OCS route and go into the uh, enlisted side, and I wanted to go see the infantry, and I enlisted into the Army as a college graduate, which I think was probably one of the best decisions I made professionally for myself, because the understanding, the experience, once you experience it, it's easier to relate and connect to people. I think that no matter what you do in life, the relationship part of who you interact with is what gets you to where you need to go. Is that we're so used to assigning leaders and giving them that full authority and power without realizing if we're capable of doing it, right? And not only that, but I was a 26-year-old college graduate, signed enlisted, and we were in the middle of a war. And if you would have given me my gold bars, uh, as an officer, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. I'm relying on people that have already done the jobs, and this is part of the reason why I love construction so much too. If we're going to make an analogy out of this, is that the people with the experience are always really overlooked, especially in the field, right? And that's their expertise. And so, as a leader, I should be coming in and asking questions to learn and to educate myself, not to come in and puff out my chest and be like, hey, this is what you need to do because I hold a certain title, role, or rank. And I've seen it enough in my family with officers, as they're raising myself, first generation Vietnamese Americans like myself. It's great to give out the order, but then not understanding the full meaning behind it was really kind of where, as growing up, I knew that if I was going to lead anybody, I needed to go through the experience myself. And it's been wonderful to be able to connect with people and understand from a different perspective, rather than just taking on the role of a leader. And I think that's very important. Even as CEO and president of Anvil Builders, a construction company I owned for about 9 years, you know, I really ran that leadership model like a pure upside down pyramid model. I was the bottom of that totem pole. I wanted to make sure the people were taken care of first because those are the people that are actually going to build out my company and my projects. And I was just really my role I took on was no different than an NCO taking care of its soldiers, right? Making sure the resources were taken, communicating my expectations, making sure they had the right training and the resources to complete the task at hand. And literally, we grew that company from someone who had no business experience, just using the military leadership model to take a $10,000 investment with obviously the support of 100 entrepreneurs and Bob personally and Tom. Um, Took that company to $65 million in gross revenue in 8 years. And I don't ever take the credit for any of that because that really belongs to the people that built the projects. You still couldn't give me a set of plans and ask me to identify and tell me to interpret the plans for you. But if you allow me to ask the questions to risk mitigate, then that's really where the success of the company came from, was empowering me with the knowledge and relying on those subject matter experts, and then letting me make on the most important risk decisions. And then if it was good, then the credit belonged to those that contributed to this. And if it was wrong, then I took the accountability for it. Because at the end of the day, a true leader doesn't allow his team to take the fall; he takes it himself. So, but we had 150 employees. We were a union shop, literally fighting tooth and nail. I think one of the injustice of being a veteran entrepreneur, especially too if you're a disabled veteran, people only hear the disabled part. They think we're incapable of doing what we need to do, because when we're limited because due to our injuries. As you'll see, when it comes to perspective, I kind of tend to think the opposite of direction, that we are not defined by our injuries. We're defined by the decisions that we decide to make, mentally and physically, on where we want to go, right? And number one, the reason why I kept trucking along was the guys that the the brotherhood that saved my life on that battlefield that night in the middle of the night, um, I owe them more than just to collect a paycheck or collect a role. I really see it as building impact for the future. I do feel like I'm on borrowed time. I was given a second chance. I think for us disabled veterans, we're all blessed with the second chance, and we're still sitting in this room and we're still having this conversation after our injuries. And so I feel like God didn't bring me back because I needed to be rich. I don't think rich was the key driver there, because when I was blowing up, I was taking my last breaths. I couldn't take 1 cent with me. I couldn't take anything but memories and experiences that I recollected in those what seemed like an eternity, but really was a matter of seconds. And then I saw darkness. And so, to even be alive and have another day, another opportunity to build that impact is what's most important. When I sold the company, it came to we always say as entrepreneurs, I'm doing this for my family. We all have reasons, right? Some of us will say directly outright, we're doing this for profit. And that's great. Some of us know, well, we're doing it for family, we're doing it for a special cause or whatever it is. But for us, I think, for me at least, as a combat veteran, you know the value of life, right? Life and death. You're not really chasing you're not chasing the money. And I think when I made the decision was because at one day, 7.5 years into running this business, I said to myself that I was doing this for the family. But the one thing that I sacrificed my time on was family, right? I had a young kid that was born in 2012. From like 2012 to 2015, the company was growing. I think I missed a lot of his milestone moments. And then knowing that, being as a combat veteran and dealing with life and death, and you're missing these moments that matter the most, what am I really doing, right? And so it was 2017. I was on vacation. I let my office know, like, hey, do not bother me while I'm on vacation. Do not. No one listened to me, and then my phone was kept being blown up, and it was a moment where I had to ask myself, what am I doing? What am I really doing here? Am I really building this great business for my family when my family is not receiving the time and the attention that I need when I'm here on this earth for borrowed time? And so I remember waking up one morning. It was like I was in at Reno, at the Pepper Mill in Reno. Uh, and I woke up at 4 in the morning, and I remember feeling like the phone couldn't just disconnect, and I felt a certain way about it, and I think it was a little heavy on my chest. I woke up, I looked in the mirror, and I was staring at the mirror, and the one thing that came to my mind was, I don't recognize who this person is. You know your values, you know the reason why you did this, and you're saying that you're doing it for the family, but what happened was the company got so successful that I focused more on my career and what Anvil was doing, and that defined who I was, and it was farther from who I was than who I wanted to be, right? And I remember looking in the mirror and I was sobbing and crying, and I was like, you know what? This is it. This is a sign, and I've been praying on it. I am a man of faith, um, and I prayed on it, and literally when I came back from vacation, even while my phone was still blowing up, I had told my two business partners that by end of the year I like to be bought out. But there was another moment prior to this that even got me even more was prior to going to this vacation, I'd come home late from work. My son was probably like 3 or 4, and I was sitting next to him on the couch. The fact that I had not built this relationship with my son, when he stubbed his toe, I was literally sitting right next to him. He went around to the other side of the house to go look for his mom to let her know that he had stubbed his toe. My feelings were hurt. My feelings were extremely hurt. I'm like, I'm your dad. I'm sitting here. I'm not a person you trust at the moment to share this because I had been gone to build this business, right? And so when this vacation came about and all the distraction and noise, I just said enough is enough, and I sold it. I know I will tell you it was the best decision I made for my family because I spent the next 3 years after we sold the company. I moved to Texas. I spent the next 3 years rebuilding those relationships, and then my daughter was born in 2017, a little bit after I had made this decision, and and I got to spend the time that I needed to spend with her after I sold the business to help her grow up. And now she's 8, and I started at Turner Construction 3 years ago, with some great mentors like Tom and Bob to help me get through the door. But as an entrepreneur, if I had to give you an advice, just remember why you're doing it and who you're doing it for, and never let the money and the if you have a great growing business, just don't let that fame get to your ego where you're like, I'm doing this for the family, but you're really not. You're really doing it for yourself, right? And so that's how I made the decision to leave Anvil. When I built Anvil Builders, I didn't build it to make money. I built it because I wanted my name and legacy to be out there. And I accomplished that goal, I would probably say 3 to 4 years. I wasn't your normal, typical veteran business owner. My favorite response to people was no. If it didn't match my core values, it didn't match my company values, I wouldn't take on the job. I didn't care how much money you dangled in front of me. Like the Army Corps of Engineer or Navy facilities, who I would bid jobs to would sometimes call me and be like, are you really not bidding this? I said, no, it doesn't match what I want to do. And it doesn't, it's not good for my team. I had to walk away from a lot of opportunities. But in the beginning, it was a difficult process to be a veteran entrepreneur because during 2008 through 2012, there were a lot of federal cases against disabled veteran entrepreneurs because people were taking advantage of the system was one. Two, the perception of disabled veteran owners was that they didn't actually do anything. They over like what we call the cream of the crop, meaning let's say you took on $1 million contract, they would only put a project manager on there and then charge 10%, and then they would subcontract that out to a larger firm at 90%, which allowing the larger firm to take advantage of the work and the opportunity. And I wasn't willing to do that, right? And I think in our community, especially our veterans community, we've had to reestablish that over the last 10 years so that we can be known as entrepreneurs and we're not just skimming the system. It just takes one bad veteran entrepreneur to ruin it for everyone else. And that's what 2008 to 2012 was like. I got the door slammed in my face. I started the company in 2010. The door was slammed in my face. I was called a fraud. I was told that I didn't really know how to do the work. Part of that was right because I wasn't a construction project manager of any kind of sort. I built out of survival through my infantry company while we were supporting SOCOM. We built everything out of survival. So construction was not my first go-to, but I knew that for our veteran community, the structure of a construction company is similar to what you would run in I'm gonna call it the infantry company. Communication, direct task was going to be very efficient, and I knew I can do that. And so I had to go down to the union, negotiate. At that time, they weren't tracking veterans that were coming back. And so I negotiated a deal with them for the rest of the industry that if veterans were coming back and they needed to fill up the union hall, that they needed to move the veterans up to the apprenticeship with no charge. Normally, to go through an apprenticeship would cost a civilian about, a few $100 to $1,000 to wait in line. And so I said, why? We're in the middle of a war here. Veterans are coming home. You want to wave your banner and say, I want to hire X amount of veterans, but then there's no action behind it. I wasn't going to settle for that. And obviously, partly because, coming from the infantry, you're very direct with your communication, and I wanted to lay down my ground expectations there. We negotiated these deals. So carpenters ended up hiring veterans through the apprenticeship program for $5 for your initiation fee. Carpenters, I mean, sorry, operators for $5. Carpenters and laborers were you just moved right up to the line as long as you had a honorable discharge on your DD 214. But those are the things that were out. When I look back at my career, I'm not looking at how big the company got. I'm looking about the impact that I instilled in that community, right? Eventually, at some point, I was asked to sit on to the state board of CalVet to help manage the disabled veteran perception of small businesses. There have been so many times, and especially too when we talk about our veteran community, there's different eras, and different eras needed different things. But as a community, we got to kind of communicate in the same way, and so I kind of help with that opportunities for our veterans in California. I'm looking to do the same thing here in the state of Texas.